Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron, and today we're going to be doing some more Deep Rock Galactic builds, at least that I use for some of the equipment. I will be doing guides for each of the classes talking about their equipment, and then we'll do one talking about the suit later on. Before I start, I should say that I'm using the site karl.gg/build. It looks a bit different than when I was using it last time. I guess they updated it from the last patch, so it should be more up to date now with all its information. And they did a color swap on it for some reason. You can go to this site and you can theory craft whatever you'd like in Deep Rock. You can also see whatever overclocks you have, and you can see exactly what kind of materials and cash that you're going to need to upgrade your weapons and equipment. So let's begin with Driller, talking about their power drills. In Tier 1, we have Barb Drills. This gives you more damage with your drills, so you go from doing 5 damage to enemies to 10 damage. This all counts as melee damage, which is very important. This one can be quite good, and I will be explaining it in one of the builds. The first build I'm going to recommend is just the regular drills, though. That works with anything, no matter what kind of gear you're going with. So we're going to be talking about the more damaging drills after that. Our second option in Tier 1 is Hardened Drill Tips. This makes it so you drill faster, 50% faster, and you get 10% more movement speed when drilling. This one's great. You can just drill through places faster. You can get to the exit quicker. You can go, a bit further, a little bit quicker, so you might be able to get away from enemies a little bit easier with it. It's all around a really good perk. And our last option is Expanded Fuel Tanks. This allows you to carry more fuel, 6 more fuel. So you'll get more from the resupply. You probably won't need to call in resupplies as often, and you can drill further. All of it is great. For the standard drills, I would recommend either going with expanded fuel tanks or going with hardened drill tips. Both of them are great. It just depends on what you want more of. Do you want to drill quicker, or do you just want to have extra fuel for your drills? Both are great options. I would not recommend barb drills for all weapons. However, it is really good in the second build that I'm going to be talking about. In Tier 2, we have magnetic refrigeration. This makes it so the cooling rate of the drills is faster when they're not in action. So if you drill a little ways and then you stop, then your drills will recharge faster, which is really good. Ideally, you don't want your drills to overheat, so this makes it so that they're less likely to overheat if you're just using them up to the point where they would overheat. Your second option in Tier 2 is Streamlined Integrity Check. This makes it so your drills come off of the overheat faster. So if you do overheat your drills, you're not waiting 8 seconds, you're waiting 5 seconds. That can be pretty good, and this one can be really good for people just starting out with Driller, getting used to the drills. But I wouldn't rely on it because ideally you don't want to be overheating your drills as much as possible. There are some situations where that'll just naturally happen because either you're not paying attention, or you go a bit further, or you're just really trying to get to the escape pod at the end. In Tier 2, I pretty much always go with the magnetic refrigeration just so that my drills can come up faster. It's a pretty good option. In Tier 3, we only have one option, which is Supercharged Motor. This makes it so we drill faster. This does the exact same effect as the hardened drill tips, so it's also great. You could combine this with hardened drill tips and then double your mining rate and have 20% more movement speed, which is pretty fun. Then at Tier 4, we have increased tank pressure. This makes it so we carry even more fuel, another 6. So we go from 44 fuel then, assuming we're running the expanded tanks in Tier 1, up to 50 fuel. So we get more fuel from resupplies. We don't have to resupply as often, and we can drill further. Great option all the way around. Or you can pick Bloody Cold Drills. This makes it so if you're killing enemies with your drills, the cooldown on the drills becomes faster. So Bloody Cold Drills can be kind of useful if you're running this in a damage build, but I still usually don't take it over just the increased tank pressure. I find extra fuel a little bit more useful. For the standard build for drills, I would recommend either going with the hardened drill tips or the fuel tanks, and then just going with the magnetic refrigeration, supercharged motor, and increased tank pressure. That way you can get either the most fuel or the most mining efficiency with this. That works great with any build. It works good with the flamethrower, the cryo cannon, the pistol, the plasma charger, any of them. It works great. If you're going to go for more of the damaging drill orientation, this is really good if you're running the passive perk Vampire, because drill damage does count as melee damage, as well as your throwing axes also count as melee damage. So if you can freeze enemies with the cryo cannon, you can kill them very easily with the drills, and you'll get bonus health back. driller can probably make the most use of the vampire perk, and it is a pretty strong build because it doesn't necessarily require resupplies as often or getting red sugar as often, because you likely will be at pretty high health most of the time. For that build, I would just recommend switching this to barbed drills, and this is the build that I usually run with it. This makes it so we do double damage with our drills from what we did. Still a refrigeration so that we cool down our drills faster because we're not going to be using them all the time. Supercharged motor because it's our only option. And then increase tank pressure just so that we have more fuel. You could switch this for the bloody cold drills, but even so, I don't find it being all that useful. You're probably not going to overheat your drills if you're freezing enemies and then can hit them because you'll be paying attention to it. And even if you do overheat your drills, it's not a huge deal. Most of the enemies are frozen, and then you can just shoot them with your cryo cannon again, or shoot them with your secondary, or just hit them with the pickaxe or throwing axe, whatever it might be. So I don't find bloody cold drills super useful. So those are the two builds I'd recommend for the reinforced power drills. One of them is more specialized, but it's great for maintaining health. The other one is just a general overall strong loadout for the drills, because the drills are extremely useful in pretty much every map, especially for like oil rigs. Now moving on to your Satchel Charge. Your Satchel Charge works just like C4. You can toss one out and then detonate it, and it does a lot of damage as well as it does terrain damage. So you can blow up the terrain with this, which can also be pretty useful. In Tier 1, we have the larger explosion radius, or larger damage radius. This makes it so our radius goes from 4.5 to 7.5, so we increase the radius by quite a bit. This one can be good if you want to use the C4 for mining, or if you would like to use it against crowds of enemies, or both. It can be very useful just to toss this on a wall and blow apart the wall so that you can either create a safe zone for the team or move into another cavern or something. That can be really useful. Or if you just want to clear up a bunch of small things, you can do that too. We also have extra Satchel Charge. This gives you one more explosive pack, so you go from 2 to 3. Great. And then we have bigger charge. This gives us more damage. So we go from 375 damage to 625 damage. So we increase our damage a lot. This is great if you want to use this on single target enemies. So there's kind of 2 or 3 options to change the C4. I'll be going over the mining one first, which I would recommend taking either the extra charge so that you can use it more often, or taking the fragmentary shell so that you have a larger explosion radius. Both are good for mining. The explosion radius can also be good for clearing out crowds, and the extra charge is just kind of nice just to have one more charge, so if you do need it. In Tier 2, we only have one option, which is Kill Switch. We can disarm any of our unused explosives, which is great. We throw it on the ground. Turns out there's no, big threat there. There's not a whole bunch of enemies. Or we just didn't position it quite right. We can go pick it back up and use it again. In Tier 3, we have extra Satchel Charge. This gives you one more explosive pack, so you get an extra one, which can be pretty useful. Or we have Volatile Compound. This makes it so you get more damage, 250 more explosion damage, but if your explosive is damaged, it can explode. This can be due to enemies, and I believe it can be due to friendlies as well. So this one can be more dangerous because there's a high potential of blowing yourself up unintentionally a lot of the time, because you might throw it on the ground, an enemy might hit it, or a friend might hit it, and it goes off. But you do a lot more damage. So once again, it's very good for single target enemies. For a mining build, though, I'd recommend just taking the extra charge. You just can't go wrong there. And then in Tier 4, you can either go with the Big Bang. This makes it so it can scare enemies away that are further away from the blast, that it doesn't just directly kill. Fearing enemies is always good. Makes them run away. Gives you some space to breathe. Gives you some time to potentially reposition yourself. We have Concussive Blast. This makes it so it stuns all enemies that are far away from the blast. This can be really good if you're going to use this on a large enemy like a Dreadnought or an Oppressor that might not die from one C4 going off on it. You can stun it and then potentially move around it, use whatever your weapon is, or have your friends move around there. It's good if you use it in combination with something like the throwing axes. Throw this, stun something, move behind it, hit it with the throwing axes. Or we have Rock Mover, which makes it so that we have a much larger explosion radius for mining. And I think now that I've told you the fragmentary shells affects the explosion radius too, and it does for the damage, but not so much for the the actual carving the area. I should have been more specific about that. This one just is destroying the area more. This can be really useful because you can create larger holes, so that you can either mine materials easier, you can get through walls faster, you can potentially make a bigger and safer space for your team. And for the mining build, I would recommend building in this way, just going with as much C4 as you can, and then larger mining areas. This is the build that I usually run on C4, just because I tend to use it more as a tool than as a direct weapon. It works just fine as a weapon, and even this build is pretty good against hordes of enemies, not the greatest against big enemies. If you wanted a specifically horde-oriented build, I would recommend going with fragmentary rounds, keeping kill switch because it's our only option, going with the extra charge, just so that we get 3 rather than just 2. And then going with Big Bang. This will just scare away enemies that don't die from the explosion, and it just makes the explosion larger for potentially killing the most amount of small enemies. This one I've used quite a bit, and I enjoy this one too. You could also go with the heavy damage single target build, which is just going with the bigger charge with the volatile compound, and then I usually go with concussive blast, but Big Bang works here too. This is just so that I have the most amount of damage because I'm only going to be using this against large enemies, and I only have 2 of these to use. Not going to be using it on most enemies, going to be using it for special occasions, and the concussive blast is just so if I don't kill the enemy, I can either put my other C4 down, or once again I can resort to using something like my axes or my primary or secondary weapons on the enemy. So these are the builds that I use with Driller for their drills and for their satchel charges. Hopefully this helped you guys out. Hopefully you guys found it a bit informative. If you guys did, be sure that you get subscribed. That way you get notifications whenever I post these kinds of videos. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye.